Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning, a very quiet Marcus Street in Corning, as there is no parking as of right now due to Glassfest. So it looks empty out there. Thank you for joining us. We've got a couple exciting updates on the show this morning. And in the 7 o'clock hour, fan favorite, former Congressman, current Assemblyman, Joe Sempolinski will be our guest. And we have an update. I mentioned it the other day that friend to the program, longtime friend to the program, Jack, is going to be joining us. Well, not joining us. We'll be seeing him. He sent some pictures in as he is in the Philippines. And I've got some exciting information about that. So let's get right to it. Mark writes in this morning. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning, Mark. He's a little tied up. He's got some errands to run, so he's going to miss a little bit of the show this morning. And he said, but I'll leave you with a funny one. The Oscar Mayer Wienermobile is going to take laps at the Indy 500. And Anthony Weiner is driving it. Just kidding about that last part. But it is actually going to take laps at Indy. That's kind of cool, isn't it? The Oscar Mayer Wienermobile taking laps at the Indy 500. It would be very newsworthy if he's running for council, right? Anthony Weiner was the driver of the Wienermobile. I always like when we can start a show talking about Anthony Weiner. What about you? Okay. Yesterday, the Republican-led House passed Trump's big, beautiful bill agenda, and it was by a single vote, which I know the media is kind of highlighting that as a negative, but I would say it's a major victory when you could only stand to lose 3 Republican votes. A smiling Speaker Mike Johnson announced a massive measure passed by a single vote, 215 to 214, and was greeted with applause. He had struggled to get it done, as he had promised, by Memorial Day before lawmakers go on recess. The sweeping package of tax cuts, Medicaid reform, and immigration spending delivers on many of President Trump's domestic campaign promises, according to ABC News. Johnson said the bill gets America back to winning again, and it's been a long time coming. It quite literally is again morning in America, isn't it? All right. Trump celebrated the passage in what he called the one big, beautiful bill in a social media post, calling it the most significant piece of legislation that will ever be signed in the history of our country. He said it fulfilled his campaign promise of no tax on tips and no tax on overtime. He also recognized the tax deductions when consumers purchase an American-made vehicle, funding for the Golden Dome, which we'll talk about here in just a moment, and the Trump Savings Account incorporated into the legislation. Trump wrote, "Great job by Speaker Mike Johnson and the House leadership, and thank you to every Republican who voted yes on the historic bill. Now it's time for our friends in the United States Senate to get to work and send this bill to my desk as soon as possible." Many Republicans were slapping each other on the back and shaking hands. Someone also played Queen's "We Are the Champions" off of a phone for about 10 seconds. Well, they whistled and applauded. 2 House Republicans, Representative Thomas Massey of Kentucky and Warren Davidson of Ohio, opposed the vote, alongside, of course, the entire Democrat House caucus. And Representative Andy Harris, the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, voted present. It's finally morning in America again, Johnson told reporters. The media and the Democrats have consistently dismissed any possibility that House Republicans could get this stuff. They did not believe that we could succeed in our mission to enact President Trump's agenda, America First agenda, but this is a big one. And once again, they have been proven wrong. The committee vote, and we know all about that. Okay. So a single vote, but all that matters is it's a win at the end of the day. 215 to 214. I guess it ended Well, it started at 1 a.m. It ended, probably around noonish, give or take, maybe. Again, Warren Davidson and Thomas Massie voting against it. So a big day. Harris said, I voted to move the bill along in the process for the president. There's still a lot of work to be done in deficit reduction and ending waste, fraud, and abuse in the Medicaid program. Now, one person, this is interesting. It was the biggest vote of the 119th Congress so far. And GOP Representative Andrew Garbarino, I'm not pronouncing that right, Garbarino, that's what it is, of New York, and David Squitskirt of Arizona were both recorded as not voting on the mega bill. Both were surprising since they had both played key roles in the legislation. Garbarino as a moderate advocate for clean energy tax credits and raising the cap on the state and local deductions, SALT, and Squitskirt as a senior member of the Ways and Means Committee. So what would make them miss it? Well, according to Speaker Mike Johnson, about Garbarino, he fell asleep in the back. No kidding. I'm going to just strangle him, but he's my dear friend. I'm guessing the Garbarino probably not overly excited that came up in conversation and that the speaker was so candid. Now, the bill extends some $14.5 trillion in tax breaks that the GOP engineered during Trump's first term. And you would think because the Democrats and the media have this idea that all money is their money, they look at these tax breaks as a negative. I'm sure you've seen the articles, you've seen the coverage online. But it included the no tax on tips, overtime pay, car loan interest, and others, which is exciting. U.S. Representative Mike Lawler, who is one of the names being thrown around for governor, running for governor, was a critical vote on the legislation and only supported it after changes were made to the $10,000 deduction for state and local taxes called SALT, raising it to $40,000 for incomes up to $500,000. The current $10,000 cap was passed by Republicans in the 2017 plan. This is interesting. He was a holdout. I wasn't really sure why he was a holdout. They originally put him at $30,000, which I think you could declare as a victory. But I guess pushing it to $40,000. Lawler said he and others in the SALT caucus negotiated in good faith with leadership and with the White House. We want to make sure this is targeted to the middle class, that we are providing real tax relief to those families who have been crushed by New York's highest in the nation tax burden under Democrat Party rule. The SALT changes were also cheered by another potential gubernatorial candidate, Representative Elise Stefanik, saying more than 77 million Americans gave House Republicans and President Trump a mandate to cut taxes, secure our border, restore energy independence, and deliver peace through strength. This legislation includes key provisions that will benefit hardworking New York families. I was especially proud to work with my New York Republican colleagues to lead on delivering significant tax relief for New Yorkers by increasing the state and local tax cap by 300%. A win for hardworking families struggling under the weight of the highest tax burden in the nation because of Governor Kathy Hochul's failed far-left tax and spend Democrat policies. Now, you notice how she specifically called out Governor Hochul. Interesting. Boy, that poll, and we're going to talk about this with Joe Sempolinski, but that poll that came out yesterday that showed that Stefanik and Hochul are essentially tied. That is remarkable considering Stefanik has not even announced that she is running, and it is so early out. So that is a very refreshing, if you will, sign for Stefanik. Now, Congressman Nick Langworthy said the bill delivers historic tax relief for working and middle-class families by stopping the expiration of the Trump tax cuts, enhances the standard deduction, boosts the child tax credit, and ends tax on tips and overtime, to name a few. There has been, we won't go through all the rest of the comments. I don't want to fall into that trap. Now, Hakeem Jeffries, we're going to talk about in just a moment. He called it one big, ugly bill. Today, every single House Democrat voted to stop the largest cuts to Medicaid and food assistance in American history. The GOP tax scam rips healthcare and food assistance away from millions of people in order to provide tax cuts to the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected. It's so cliche, so trite, and so very predictable in the statements. We're going to talk a little bit more about Hakeem Jeffries here in just a moment. Now, some of the GOP holdouts did sound the alarm on the $36 trillion debt crisis. Thomas Massey, who voted against this, said, while I love many things in the bill, promising someone else will cut spending in the future does not cut spending. Deficits do matter, and this bill grows them now. The only Congress we can control is the one we're in. Consequently, I cannot support this big deficit plan, no. Massey responded soon after, telling Davis that he agreed that if he were serious, we'd be cutting spending now instead of promising to cut spending years from now. I'd love to stand here and tell the American people we can cut your taxes and increase spending and everything is going to be just fine. But I can't do that because I'm here to deliver a dose of reality. This bill dramatically increases deficits in the near term, but promises our government will be fiscally responsible 5 years from now. Where have we heard that before? So a little bit of back and forth. We're not going to talk too much about this. Carolyn Leavitt said, I don't think he likes to see grandstanders in Congress, meaning Trump's attacks on Massey. What's the alternative? I would ask those members of Congress, did they want to see a tax hike? Did they want to see our country go bankrupt? That's the alternative by them trying to vote no. The president believes the Republican Party needs to be unified. So we can't afford it. Senator Lisa Murkowski railed against the bill's work requirements for Medicaid. Imagine that. And she's still considered a Republican. Why should the work requirement upset anybody if you're an able-bodied individual receiving Medicaid? I'm confused by that. But this is coming from CNN. Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri, who's been one of the Senate's most vocal critics of the House Medicaid plan, is eyeing another big change as well. He wants more robust child tax credits than the $2,500 included in the House bill. It needs to be higher. Senator Ron Johnson said, somebody's got to be the dad that says, I know y'all want to go to Disney World, but we can't afford it. I guess I'm going to be that guy. So it is going to be kind of a tough row to hoe here in the future. So we can talk about the big, beautiful bill. Again, most media outlets quoting Massey, quoting the holdouts, the ones that don't want it because that fits their agenda. It ties in exactly with what they want to use the talking points of Hakeem Jeffries. So the media is going, and it's good for Massey, right? I mean, if that's what you want to be, if you want to get all the attention from people that hate you, get all the media attention from those that never want to see you do well, there you go. You got it. You got it. All right, we got to take a short break. Your thoughts on the big, beautiful bill. We'll talk a little bit more about it. We've got a lot to update you on. As I said, Joe Sempolinski coming up in just a little bit, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horsets. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. All right, Hakeem Jeffries. Well, it's no Cory Booker scenario, but he spoke for roughly 37 minutes, starting around 5:30 a.m., calling the big, beautiful bill an assault on the economy, an assault on health care, an assault on nutritional assistance, an assault on tax fairness, and an assault on fiscal responsibility. He went on, it's all pretty cliche, you get it. Children will get hurt. Women will get hurt. Older Americans who rely on Medicaid for nursing home care and for home care will get hurt. People with disabilities who rely on Medicaid, to survive will get hurt. People with disabilities who rely on Medicaid to survive will get hurt. Yes, I'm sorry. Hospitals in your district will close. Nursing homes will shut down. And people will die. That's not hype. That's not hyperbole. That's not a hypothetical. We're here to say as House Democrats, if your representative won't fight for you, we will. Okay, so because of the big, beautiful bill, according to Mr. Jeffries, people will die, that nursing homes will shut down. Is there anything he missed in there? I know this is very typical. This statement could have been read anytime Republicans are in charge because they use the same old repeated talking points. Was there any he missed in there? Now, Representative Derek Van Orden said about Hakeem Jeffries' 37-minute speech that it was pathetic, and he called out the Democrat leader for fear-mongering. I'm not going to go read out some of the other things he said. But fear-mongering with our seniors, hungry children, veterans, and all Americans who are most in need. It is sad because you see those in need, elderly, people with disabilities, and you see the media and people like Hakeem Jeffries keep using these scare tactics, keep this fear-mongering up, using this rhetoric. And it's unfortunate because it creates a scenario where they're so upset, so stressed, and it's outright lies, what they're saying, and they're instilling this fear all for political gain. Now, the New York Post has, I think, a fair point. That 2 cheers on passing the tax bill, it's too bad spending's still out of control. No, we're not whining that the big, beautiful bill increases the deficit. Virtually the bill's entire impact in that sense comes from fending off massive pre-programmed tax hikes that would derail the economy. Keeping tax rates constant, along with enhanced border security and other core parts of Trump's agenda, is a heavy lift in its own right, given Republicans' narrow majorities in the House and Senate and Democrats' still lockstep opposition to anything and everything Trump. Nor is success yet certain. The Senate must have its say, and then the 2 chambers will need to split their differences and vote again. Still, eventually the president and his allies need to level with the American people about the hard but simple truth that spending has shot up too far, too fast, and with no good justification. Nearly everyone in Washington thinks that voters don't want to hear the truth, but sooner or later they'll need to, because this literally can't go on. And the later the course correction begins, the deeper the hole the country will be in, and the greater the pain to get out of it. So the sooner our leaders start taking some truth-telling risks, the better. One thing that we learn about the bill, according to The Independent, Trump's big, beautiful bill defunds Medicaid-covered transgender surgery. There is also a provision in there that deregulates, for lack of a better word, firearm silencers. This is a massive Second Amendment victory, one that takes important steps towards restoring our constitutional freedom, says Representative Andrew Clyde, a gun store owner who aggressively lobbied for the measure. So deep in the mega bill, if you will, is a provision that would scrap a $200 federal excise tax on silencers and remove them from registration requirements under the National Firearms Act, in what is a significant win for gun rights and hearing protection advocates. Contrary to what the name implies, and many movies suggest, silencers don't actually make gunshots go silent. Instead, they are used to direct gases from the gun's barrel through a series of chambers to reduce the sound of the loud bang. And if you've ever shot a gun with a silencer, you know very well that it is still loud. It's just not as loud. It's not as in the movies where it just sounds like a click or a small hiss. Trust me. I'm not going to get into all the decibel levels. But Knox Williams, the president and executive director of the American Suppressor Association, said there's a common misconception that suppressors can actually eliminate the noise of a gunshot. And that could not be further from the truth. In reality, suppressors do reduce the noise of gunshots to a safer level, but they are still incredibly loud. Gunshots are so loud that without adequate hearing protection, they will cause permanent hearing damage. Gun rights activists generally prefer the term suppressor as compared to silencer. The firearm attachments remain banned in 8 states as well as the District of Columbia, so it does not benefit us necessarily here in New York State, but still worth mentioning. And that also ties in with what we were talking about with a big, beautiful bill with the Golden Dome, which was a part of the bill, and I have it out of order here, so now I'm killing time. There we go. President Trump this week took important steps to advance his Golden Dome, and it is interesting. It's a missile defense system. It's kind of finishing off where Reagan started. Many people, I think, if you ask them, would believe that Star Wars, Reagan's plan, was actually in effect. Just had a dog jump up watching the show. Big fan, likes it. That's a first for that. But that Star Wars would have actually been implemented. The fact of the matter is, it has not been. It was mocked and ridiculed by Democrats and the media, just like this will be mocked and ridiculed by Democrats and the media. But it's an important step. Even Canada, who, if you recall, the Prime Minister saying that they were going to fight Trump at every turn, wanting to be a part of the Golden Dome. For years, administrations of both parties have failed to devote sufficient resources to missile defense, even as China and Russia have sprinted to develop new ways to threaten the American homeland. Our margin of safety has badly eroded in the face of these adversaries' ballistic, hypersonic, and cruise missiles capable of striking the homeland with either conventional or nuclear warheads, said Pete Hegseth. A new Defense Intelligence Agency assessment this month pointed in particular to Beijing and Moscow's aggressive efforts to field new hypersonic glide vehicles engineered to complicate U.S. defenses in the event of a conflict. Now, we don't need to get through all of this, but this week, Trump named General Michael Gutlein, currently Vice Chief of Space Operations for the U.S. Space Force, to lead the Golden Dome effort. That's a smart decision. Gutlein has significant experience in acquiring space and missile defense capabilities and has served in key positions at the National Reconnaissance Office and the Missile Defense Agency. Trump also signaled that Canada could partner in the effort, news that Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney confirmed Wednesday. That's smart, too. Canada already plays a vital role in the North American Aerospace Defense Command, and dozens of radars in Canada help provide Americans early warning of incoming missiles. The big, beautiful bill, reconciliation bill that passed the House early Thursday, includes $25 billion in Golden Dome funding, but that could just be a down payment. As Trump's Tuesday display made clear, the Golden Dome vision is a major defense priority for this administration. The focus on homeland missile defense is long overdue. Now we need a detailed plan that can be accomplished at the speed of relevance and at a cost Americans will support. A couple other things we're going to get to, some other breaking news stories. As I mentioned, Joe Sempolinski will be our guest coming up here in just a little bit, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Comment from a viewer. The big, beautiful bill passed. How many ideas did the Democrats offer to make it better? Yeah, the answer is none. They had their talking points and their rhetoric. Listen, before one single piece of the big, beautiful bill was revealed, they already had their talking points about the end of Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. Exactly. So you are exactly right. Breaking story from yesterday. A divided Supreme Court on Thursday blocked the creation of the nation's first religious charter school, a major loss for those advocating a greater role for religion in public life. A court split 4-4 over whether to allow St. Isidore of Seville Virtual Charter School, keeping in place the Oklahoma Supreme Court's decision that a religious charter school would violate the Constitution's clause aimed at keeping religion separate from government. Justice Amy Coney Barrett did not participate in the decision, leaving the 9-member court evenly divided. Although she didn't give a reason, Barrett is close friends with a Notre Dame law school professor who was an early legal advisor to the Catholic Church in Oklahoma. What are your thoughts about Amy Coney Barrett? I know there's a lot of concern out there. So as an update from that tragic shooting of the young Israeli embassy staffers, that were shot dead outside of the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington. We are learning more about the alleged shooter Elise Rodriguez, 30. He was yelling "Free Palestine," as we had mentioned yesterday on the program. He had a manifesto, of course, posted a manifesto calling for violent attacks in response to the, quote, genocide in Gaza. The alleged gunman had worked as an oral history researcher on African-American communities at educational nonprofit The History Makers. The young couple that were murdered in cold blood were set to get engaged next week on a trip to Jerusalem. He had called the murderer, the alleged murderer, reportedly posted "Death to America," and unfortunately, like many in society today, for some absurd, insane reason, praised Luigi Mangione, the Chicago English major who chanted "Free Palestine" after he was arrested for allegedly gunning down 2 Israeli embassy diplomats. Reportedly posted "Death to America" and "Death to Israel," along with "I voted for Hamas" on his social media posts. He also applauded Luigi Mangione, praised political violence, and included thinly veiled death threats to Jews. "Happy New Year, death to Israel," his account tweeted at the beginning of 2024. "Death to America," with America spelled with 3 Ks. Another post from December says, "Violence does not have to happen, but if it does, then it should." And again, after the 2024 election, saying, "Don't blame me, I voted for Hamas." FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino confirmed that investigators were looking at certain writings. The FBI is aware of certain writings allegedly authored by the suspect, and we hope to have updates as to the authenticity very, very soon. Now, a sick pro-Hamas group celebrated the horrific murder of those Israeli diplomats. Pro-Hamas groups and other Iran-backed trolls hailed the barbaric murder of 2 Israeli embassy staffers as a heroic attack, claiming it was justified in response to the war on Gaza. The pro-Hamas Gaza Now media group celebrated suspect Elise Rodriguez, 31, as an ally against Zionism and welcomed the violent attack that killed the soon-to-be engaged couple. In a moment of courage, he decided to make his voice heard and boldly confront the killers, the group wrote on Telegram, referring to the embassy workers, one of whom was working to get more humanitarian aid to Gaza. I don't want to read anymore. I don't want to give him a soapbox, but praising the horrific murder of those Israeli diplomats. But like Mike Huckabee said, start being human beings. Start acting with a lot of civility towards each other. Get information that is active or is accurate. When people are out there saying from the river to the sea, they're demonstrating their ignorance. They're uninformed idiots to say such things. But I think it's also important to push back strongly and to stand up for the Jewish people across the world and to say they've been through the Holocaust. They were chased all over the world for 2,000 years, and we're not going to let that happen again. I hope all my fellow Christians will join me in being loud voices to say no more, never again. We said that after the Holocaust. It's time to say it again, but a lot louder and mean it a lot more, and stand with our Jewish friends as never before and let them know that we're not going to go through, that they're not going to go through this alone, and we're going through it with them. But we're also going to demand that strict punishment goes to those who commit acts of violence against innocent people who committed no crime. Their only fault is they love God and they're Jewish, and that's not a sin, and that's not a crime. That's U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee. But I think the Post had a really good point on this. That the D.C. anti-Semitic terror killings channel the spirit of the campus protests that we've talked so frequently about on this program. Rodriguez, the alleged murderer, said, I did it for Gaza," when arrested. This was anti-Semitic terrorism. Yes, the screed he apparently posted on social media just before the attack cites the high death toll in Gaza, the ineffectiveness of nonviolent protests against Israel, and anger at U.S. support for Israel as justification for murder. Rodriguez, born and raised in America with no obvious link to the Middle East, is a man of the modern left. following in the footsteps not just of the pro-Palestinian lunatic who recently firebombed the home of Governor Josh Shapiro, but also of Luigi Mangione, much lionized as the healthcare assassin. Indeed, posts from what's thought to be Rodriguez's X account applauded Mangione, as I mentioned. In short, Rodriguez did just what all those college protesters have been demanding: globalize the Intifada. No matter that Lisinski was a Christian, nor that Milgram worked on building peaceful collaborations between Palestinians and Israelis, such details don't matter to the progressive haters. Old school right-wing anti-Semitism is still real and periodically deadly, but it's astonishing how far the global left has went with this Islamist anti-Semitism. Hamas, after all, imposes Sharia law in Gaza. It's not just a lust for violence that unites them, but a hatred for the Western civilization. And that's what Douglas Murray said, that DC's killing shows how Americans are being incited to kill Jews by anti-Israel propaganda. We'll talk maybe a little bit more about this. We've got a lot to cover, and I know we've got an update from Jack in the Philippines. We also have Joe Sempolinski coming up in the 7 o'clock hour. So we got to take a break. And coming up next, I see Climate Fact Friday with Bob just came in. So sit back and relax. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Here we go. That's right, Climate Fact Friday from Bob. Good morning. Well, good morning, Bob. I always look forward to this. This is Climate Fact Friday from Bob. Today's topic, wind turbines. When I visited a wind farm, I asked why there was a grid lined out with ribbon and rope under one of the 400-foot turbines. They said that's where students from a local environmental college count dead birds and bats to estimate the overall effects of turbines on the wildlife. In 2012 alone, an estimated 500,000 birds were killed by turbines, 83,000 of them being birds of prey. There is one facility in California that kills 75 to 150 golden eagles each year. Who thinks wind turbines are good for the environment? Let me know. Be safe and have a good Memorial Day weekend. Same with you, Bob. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. Thank you, as always, for your comments. Moving along here, we have quite a few things to get to. Now, Trump administration did accuse, tying this in with that tragic killing and the anti-Semitism on college campuses. The Trump administration accuses Columbia University of violating Jewish students' rights. Columbia University violated civil rights laws by acting with deliberate indifference towards student harassment of Jewish students since the start of the Israel-Hamas war, the Trump administration alleged yesterday. I don't see how you could look at it any other way. Not only deliberate indifference, in many cases encouraging this intimidation of Jewish students. The findings carefully document the hostile environment Jewish students at Columbia University have had to endure for over 19 months, disrupting their education, safety, and well-being. Columbia is accused of failing to protect Jewish students against discrimination based on race, color, or national origin from October 7, 2023 through the present, violating Title 6, of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The findings included that Columbia allegedly failed to investigate or punish vandalism in its classrooms, which include the repeated drawing of swastikas and other universally recognized hate images, and did not establish effective reporting and remediation mechanisms for anti-Semitism until the summer of 2024. We encourage Columbia University to work with us to come to an agreement that reflects meaningful changes that will truly protect Jewish students. Columbia told Axios that it is committed to combating anti-Semitism. We understand this finding is part of our ongoing discussion with the government, said a spokesman. Not enough has been done. Now Trump has also yanked Harvard's international student program, potentially kicking out thousands. Now, a judge has said not so fast, of course, is the case. The Trump administration moved Thursday to kick out thousands of foreign students enrolled at Harvard University, accusing its leaders of fostering anti-Semitism, only for a federal judge to block immigration officials from revoking the legal status of international students. Just hours later, everybody getting ready for Glass Fest. We got a big wave there. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, want to be on TV, announced the cancellation of the Student Exchange Visitor Program for the Ivy League institution, meaning current students from overseas must transfer or leave the U.S. after threatening in a letter last month that leaders not provide data about crimes committed by foreign students, that would force her hand. Anyway, I'm going through these quick because I've got two big stories I got to get to before Joe Sempolinski joins us. So let's jump ahead we're going to jump ahead of those. We're going to take a break. When we come back, a couple local stories as well as an international story that ties in directly to Frankly Speaking. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. The Frankly Speaking roof cam getting a little rained on there this morning, but it's brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Before we talk about friend of Frankly Speaking, Jack, and his story, I want to say a big thank you to all of those at the Hornell Sun. I highly recommend, and you don't have to be just in Hornell. It covers a lot of area. So go to hornellsun.com if you want to find out more. It's got great local coverage. And I just want to give them a big thank you because I was, as I do every day, checking the Hornell Sun, and I saw this wonderful piece. And I should have probably framed that better. But it says, Sheriff Allard, Steuben County files for another 30-day extension to appeal. And it's by Andrew Harris. And it said, in a regular appearance on Frank Akam's talk show, the subject of the sheriff's pending legal battles with Steuben County brought to light new developments. Frankly Speaking has been at the forefront of the reporting on the battle over indemnification of the county sheriff. I might have been at the forefront, but I still hate saying it. In this interview, Akam asked the sheriff for updates on the legal fight, which has pitted an elected sheriff against the legislature. Allard explained the heart of the matter in a 2023 release. We talked about that in the past. We don't need to go through all of that. In late 2023, the county legislature voted to remove the standard coverage afforded to the county sheriff in what many felt was personally motivated by now former legislative chair Scott Van Etten. Allard responded by taking the county to New York State Supreme Court and decisively winning that argument. The county has been mulling an appeal since the decision, but has only filed for extensions to appeal so far. So thank you again to the Hornell Sun for giving us such great coverage of Frankly Speaking. And I really do appreciate the comment that we've been at the forefront of reporting on the battle over indemnification. All right. Also, hey, while we're speaking of Hornell, friend of Frankly Speaking, Mayor Buckley. Oh, and again, it's hornellsun.com. I just want to say that one last time and give them a big kudos. Mayor John Buckley, our friend, released a statement yesterday saying, I'm pleased to announce that the city of Hornell has been awarded $300,000 in Restore New York funding to help advance the redevelopment of the Landman building, a cornerstone of our downtown revitalization initiative, and a proud recipient of DRI project funding. Located at 8393 Main Street, directly across from City Hall, this historic structure is set to be fully transformed into a vibrant, mixed-use development. The project will include the construction of a third story and will bring a dynamic combination of apartment units, retail shops, art studios, and rooftop terrace to the heart of our downtown. This revitalization effort will draw more residents and businesses to Main Street, injecting new energy and economic opportunity into the community. We're grateful for the continued partnership and support from Empire State Development, especially Omar Sanders, whose efforts have been instrumental in making this progress possible. This funding is another step forward in creating a more dynamic and thriving downtown Hornell. Now, speaking of the mayor, Mayor John Buckley has a great new program on WLEA called The Pulse. It's on at 1 o'clock on Saturday and 1 o'clock on Sunday, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, of course. He was kind enough to have me on a couple weeks ago, and I reached out to him to see who was on this week, and it's Hornell Fire Chief Frank Brzezowski. Hope I'm pronouncing that right, but John Buckley doing a great job there in Hornell as mayor, but also on the radio. Gave me great flashbacks to the old days on radio. All right, when we come back and we wrap up our number one, I'm going to tell you a pretty neat story about our friend Jack and its ties to Frankly Speaking. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. I've got to tell you this really neat story before we wrap up our number one. Now, those of you may recall Jack, who during the election season was kind enough to make some amazing bumper stickers that some of you asked me to mail to you. And I thought I had one here that was, I wanted to show you the most, there it is, the most popular one, which was the Triumph logo that highlighted Trump. Jack, who's watched the show, I would say almost every single episode since we've been on, is on a trip to the Philippines. And he sent me an email, and he said, after our 16-hour flight up over Canada, then through the Arctic Circle, and then down the continental coast of the other side of the planet, we tracked our path using a map on the seat back. The screen showed an outside temperature of minus 90 degrees in the Arctic Circle at 30,000 feet. I'm sending this message via email because the Sling service that I normally use is geo-blocked, so I'm not able to watch my favorite show live. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. From Iloilo, I-L-O-I-L-O, in the Philippines. I've been a loyal watcher since the beginning, and being without my morning serving of coffee, breakfast, and Frankly Speaking saddened me at first. I was hoping to keep the connection going like I had been able to watch every show no matter where I was in the United States. I decided the next best thing would be bring a small sampling via pictures and words to show a glimpse of the atmosphere via email. I felt so welcomed by the Philippine people and feel like everyone has always been a longtime friend. A few of the people that I met are surprisingly current with U.S. politics. They've been reporting to me many of the same issues that we have, such as our government trying to electrify transportation. We talked for a long time at the lunch table about Trump policies. They were deeply interested in my point of view of the politics of my country from boots on the ground travelers like me. They especially wanted my opinion about the tariffs because they were concerned about the impact to their jobs. I told them that it is a very fluid situation right now, and Trump's trying to find a balance of incentives to help make the system more fair. Much of the atmosphere away from the house, as far as downtown mainstream shopping and dining is concerned, is almost identical to what we have in the U.S. I've seen all the familiar food groups like McDonald's, but chose to try the local cuisine. As for the traffic here, thank God I don't have to drive in it. It's an every man for himself semi-chaos environment akin to a scene out of Mad Max. Traffic lights are virtually non-existent with no stop signs at intersections. The motorcycles, gas motorized tricycles with sidecars, and handmade Jeep buses down the road, they all seem to be in a frantic race to everywhere. Well, Mr. Assemblyman. The local drivers, you can sit there whenever. The local drivers turn all that chaos into a non-contact aerobatic ballet. It's better for you to just sit back and pretend you're on an amusement park ride. That's my report so far. I'm trying to keep doing the updates whenever I can. The reason I bring up his story, here we go. Here's the picture, and a first for Frankly Speaking. There's Jack in the Philippines. We see him enjoying all the local scenes. And now, I think, there's the big one. He is watching Fridays with Phil Palmisano on Frankly Speaking. So it's Fridays with Phil in the Philippines. Yeah, it's a first. Watching it. Yeah, isn't that cool? And there's inside the church. And there's a better look at the mansion. And finally, there's his nice dinner. So thank you to Jack for sending that in. Watching us from the Philippines. That's a first. Hey, the Assemblyman's in the studio. So let's wrap up our number one. Keep those comments, keep those waves coming in. And we'll be back with Frankly Speaking after this. The Frankly Speaking roof cam. Look at them set up. Everybody's setting up for Glass Fest. Thank you to Boss Security for bringing us that amazing view. This is the Hesselson Studio, and joining me in the Hesselson Studio, Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski. Hey.
So happy to be in Corning, not in Albany.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Glass Fest, Corning tradition.
I know. 18 years, I think it was.
Been doing it a while.
Colleen Fabrizi's retiring after this year. She's the one that started it.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, we had her on the program the other day.
Congratulations.
Yeah, she's excited.
She's done a lot of exciting work on in-town stuff here in Corning.
Absolutely. A couple comments from viewers. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning. I hope you have an enjoyable Memorial Day weekend. Thank you. They have a great Memorial Day ceremony out here. Did you see the flags when you're coming in?
I saw the field of flags because of Glass Fest. Usually I park on the street for the folks, and I parked behind the palatial Hesselson's Hot Tub Studios, and so I did get a chance to see the park there by the river and the field of flags, and myself. Am I good on the mic?
Yeah, you're good. You're good. It's a boom mic.
Oh, nice. All right.
Can't hide money.
That's right. That's it. It's working. Just let the mic do the work. And I will be personally. I'll be speaking in the town of Allegheny, and then rushing to try and get to the city of Olean. Luckily, those are adjacent community, so I think I'll be able to do both, but I was very graciously invited to speak at both of those. That's where I will be on Memorial Day, and I encourage everybody in their own way to remember there are people who are not with us, and they gave everything so we can live in freedom.
Absolutely. Comment from a different viewer. Good morning, Joe Sempolinski. You got a specific good morning for you.
Well, good morning.
I'm going to count
intrepid viewer.
So, what do you think? The big beautiful bill. We're going to talk about the budget. Don't worry.
Bill. Well, a couple thoughts. One, just a pure branding thing.
That's beautiful.
So, it's the legal name of the bill.
I know.
Right? That because it's the the such and such act is the first line of any federal legislation you can refer to as such and such. And Donald Trump is to branding, I think, what like Wayne Gretzky is to hockey, or Michael Jordan is to basketball, or what have you. So he makes these alliterative comments of the Big Beautiful Bill, and now it is the Big Beautiful Act, I guess, right? Because it is, or no, it's past the House, hasn't passed the Senate yet, so it's on its way to being.
And it's also something about it being triple B, like everything just is so.
Alliteration is always good for a branding thing. So we got the Big Beautiful Bill, which is still still a quadruple or triple B, and we'll try and get the A moving forward, I guess. I don't know. But what I found interesting was, so it passed the House, and I started getting briefing material and briefings from the governor's office, and obviously the governor's not on the same page with the president and all that. And as I'm, having that presented to me, I'm going, sounds better. It sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it's actually a good thing.
Because the type of reaction, sort of the doom and gloom regarding like Medicaid and stuff, what's been presented to me is we're talking about work requirements. We're talking about, confirming immigration status, things like that. So it's not, wholesale cuts per se. It's saying, hey, if we have a limited amount of resources, well, then the people that are getting those resources should be the ones that really need it, who Medicaid was designed originally for, the disabled, people that are just, temporarily down on their luck, maybe a mom with young kids, those type of folks. I don't think anybody,
no one's
including the president, president's been very clear about not wanting to have wholesale sort of across the board cuts on Medicaid.
In language we can't use on here.
I mean, very clear. The president is very clear. So when you're talking to me about if somebody's, working age, able-bodied, doesn't have young dependents, they should probably be working or in an education program or doing something. Volunteering. That's people talk about work requirements, and a lot of times they'll say, "Oh, well, what if you can't find a job or something?" Well, every single person who's able-bodied can go volunteer somewhere in the community. There is myriad community organizations. So we just want to get people back in a position where they're being self-sufficient. So this from a Medicaid perspective, that makes a lot of sense to me as to if we're going to save money on this very large, very expensive program, that being the mechanism by which you do it is makes a lot of sense. My understanding is I think there's similar things with SNAP, as far as work requirements and that
Sure.
sort of thing. So,
Do you find it, because you followed this so closely your whole life, like I have,
Yeah.
and I know Limbaugh used to talk about this a lot, isn't it just so trite or so like old that it's always Medicaid's done, Social Security's
Yeah.
done? Hakeem Jeffries, you could have heard that speech during when Newt Gingrich was speaker. Do you know what I mean?
right. Yeah, there's this feeling in the Democratic Party, and it's been there for a long time, that if you just that's sort of like a boogeyman you can use to
Yeah.
say, they're going to take care of, they get rid of Medicaid. Well, these programs are big and expansive, and if somebody shouldn't be receiving the help, who are they really hurting? They're hurting the people that should be receiving the help, that we all concur should be getting a little extra help, where there's 100% unanimity. And when there's concerns about the overall health of a program, those people that are the targeted audience, if there's extra people that shouldn't be getting it, they're the ones that are put at risk. So we do have to have these tough conversations where we're in massive deficit. We have to talk about what is the best use of our resources that we do have, and things like work requirements make perfect sense to
seems
me.
like the
I
American
think to
people
me
would
that's like the low hanging fruit.
Well, and that's why they don't word it that way.
That's right.
Because they just say it's the end of Medicaid, or however their attack on Medicaid. Because I would believe that the American people would overwhelmingly support reforms.
Yeah,
like
because
that
they
to
present it as like, these people are going to lose their Medicaid. Well, yeah, they probably they all we're asking them to do is
work very
or just education, or volunteer type stuff. So it's again that portion of it is very reasonable. Now the other caveat, and goes back to the Big Beautiful Bill, Big Beautiful Act, is it's through the House. The Senate still has to act, and I think everybody's anticipating that it'll have to, even though it's a reconciliation bill, that there'll have to be some tweaks, some changes to get through the Senate. So we don't know for sure exactly what provisions of this will become law. Certainly, I think a lot of it will, but we have to bear that in mind. We are only through one part of the legislative process. We still have to go through the other chamber, which is obviously the Senate and the House, even more so, dramatically more so than the Assembly and the Senate in Albany.
Yeah.
The U.S. House and the U.S. Senate are very different political entities and very different political dynamics. So you never quite know exactly what's going to happen to get something through the Senate, because you saw over the last couple of weeks how many different last-minute maneuvers and changes, and this is in, it's back in, it's out, it's back in, to get it through the House with a very slim margin. The Senate's a whole different thing, and from what I understand, what was reported in the media, the Speaker is hoping to wrap this up by the 4th of July, which,
it's not bad.
It sounds like that might be, if you can get through the House, that might be possible. But again, you don't know what quite comes out of the Senate. And then if there's changes in the Senate, it's got to pass the House again, right? Because those got to match. So we still got a ways to go. We are not done talking about the big, beautiful
bill.
One big, beautiful bill, I believe, is the government name for it.
And that's what it even says in the headlines.
Yeah.
Like ABC,
Yeah.
CBS.
So he's got everybody
talking about one big, beautiful bill
on his terms.
Yeah.
Think about the contrast. Who calls it the Affordable Care Act?
Yeah.
Nobody.
No.
It's Obamacare.
It's Obamacare. Yep.
And that was inflicted upon
President
Obama. That wasn't Obama saying that.
Yeah.
This being the one big, beautiful bill is something that
he owns.
President Trump just came up with.
Yeah.
So the branding skill is I'm sort of in awe of his branding skill.
It's constant. It really is. And I like this idea of the Golden Dome, because I think we were talking about this on the program. I think most people would think that Reagan's Star War initiative was actually in effect. I don't think most people know that we are very vulnerable to an attack, because at the time, of course, it was mocked and ridiculed, just like this will be. Right. So it never reached the finish line. So this is kind of the end to that game.
I've heard historians sort of theorizing that regarding Star Wars, Reagan's Star Wars as sort of an analogy. Because people, in some ways, people talk about Reagan a little bit like they talk about Trump now, because Reagan was a little unorthodox. You can't just go to Germany and say tear down the wall. You can't say that, and it was exactly what needed to be said, right? And I've heard people speculate that Star Wars, while sort of a bluff, like obviously, as you point out, we didn't have the technology then. We don't really have it now yet. We're working on it, sort of thing. Soviets believed it.
Oh yeah.
Soviets were like, oh man, we can't keep up with that.
We can't do that.
Did that accelerate some of their internal
decision making?
economic problems as they decided as they're trying to keep up with our technology, trying to keep up with our military, and then the thing, communism.
That thing. That little old thing.
Yeah, little thing, communism, collapses upon itself under its own weight. So sometimes you need to be bold and just say things and just say, hey, we're going to try and do these things. We're going to try and put a man on the moon. We're going to try and put up a shield to protect us. And, so being bold and is not always a bad thing.
I like that, being bold and saying things. And that sounds like Trump. That's his
right.
biography.
That's right. You want to talk about what the guy does? That's sort of
that's 100% it. But I think at the end of the day, this is a great step because I know Mike Johnson was hoping to get this part of it done before Memorial Day weekend. I think that's, though a small day difference here. Yeah, I think that's a big message.
The fact that he was able to get it done after all of the different competing interests. I mean, thinking about trying to get the folks whose primary concern is state local tax deduction on the same page with people whose primary concern is Medicaid work requirements, or there's, because everybody's got their one or two things that are their big things, or they've got something that they really don't like,
right? And
you got to figure out a way to talk to them. Getting 218 people with big personalities and their own individual political concerns and interests and their own districts and their own consciences, getting them all on the same page is no easy feat for any speaker, Republican or Democrat. So when a piece of legislation like this is able to move through a chamber, it is impressive from just a legislative skill for the speaker, and it looked like the president sort of timed his visit to he let it percolate, and when it was close enough that he could sort of shove it across the line, because you don't want to wait too long, but more importantly, you don't want to sort of bring the president to bear too early. Right. It seemed like they had their timing down.
Very impressive. I mean, you could tell Mike Johnson was feeling good after it yesterday.
Well, right. Go get some sleep.
I know. Well, that too.
Some of these hearings are marathon sessions.
People falling asleep. That's never a good look.
Yeah.
And I try not to pick on him because I know that would be me. I'm just saying.
And I know the gentleman in question.
So
I served with the gentleman in question, and he's a very nice guy.
He can't be happy that Johnson brought that up, though.
Everything
was good.
I have not talked to him, but I would assume not.
Not necessary to bring that up.
But I would just say, nice fella.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Seriously. No, that's not like a euphemism.
I know. I totally agree.
Nice
I totally agree. I just think it's funny because he worked hard on this.
Yeah.
That's what's funny.
He was sort of a bridge between, sort of the blue state Republicans and the rest of the conference, and he's, and Andrew's a great guy.
Yeah. And you got
it's funny because the reason I sort of say it this way for the viewers is. Every so often, one of these headlines hits. Yeah. And I actually know the person.
Yeah. Then
because of my Mr. Smith Goes to Washington
story.
Story.
Former congressman.
And I served with this particular gentleman, and I saw it. I'm like, that's
no. Yeah.
But
but the funny thing is, he would have got away with it too if it weren't for that meddling Mike Johnson.
Andrew's
he's doing a good job.
Guy.
That's why you feel.
Guy.
And I think that's why Mike Johnson was having a little fun.
Right,
yeah. But we got to take our first break of this hour. Stay with us. We'll be right back with the former congressman, current assemblyman after this. The Frankly Speaking roof cam. It's rainy out there, but that's okay. We're going to have a blast at Glass Fest. But thank you to Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, and in that studio, former Congressman, current Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski. All right, Joe, what did you think? It's on this program, full disclosure, it's been very frustrating to hear people like Jake Tapper now tell us, guess what? You're not going to believe it. There might have been some mental acuity issues with Biden.
There's the meme from the comedy skit with the guy in the hot dog suit. So we're all trying to find the guy who did this. And it's obvious, he's the one that crashed the hot dog car. I get that reaction to this. The media covered up that this guy may not have all of his gears moving.
Yeah.
And then the guy that did it
Yeah.
is writing the book about how it happened.
Yes.
And like it's infuriating.
It is.
And I think that's the reaction from most people that is either just anger or they become so jaded with the media. It's like, yep, of course they would do that.
100%.
Of course they would cover up that the president,
And-
is, has the situations he's dealing with, and now they're going to make money off it.
Yeah,
with a
insult to injury.
book
Yeah.
about how it got covered up, and now we're going to talk about it. Like,
I mean, Jake Tapper to have the audacity to say, I guess looking back at it, I should have covered it more. Should have covered it at all and not
Right.
defended.
Right.
He said at one point, and I'm paraphrasing, but the theme is accurate. He said, well, Biden's people kept saying everything was okay. Well, do you think he accepts Trump's
Right.
people saying anything? That
his
it's the gospel?
job is to
Question.
question those people.
I know.
Well, they said everything was cool, so
Yeah.
we'll just do something else.
For the next 4 years.
And that would never, to your point,
Yeah.
ever happen to Donald Trump or George W. Bush or Ronald Reagan or go back however you want to go as far as Richard Nixon or whatever. You can go all the way back on Republicans, and they dig and they dig and they dig.
Yep.
They make movies about how they were digging into them.
Yeah.
They're becoming
Great point.
heroes.
Yeah.
And, Nixon says Watergate's cool. Move on to the next thing. Like come on. It is absurd.
It's so frustrating.
And again, now he's making money off it. He's monetizing his own
failure. His failure.
At best incompetence.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And at worst nefariousness. It is.
And Joe Scarborough.
I'm apoplectic.
I am too. Joe Scarborough had the audacity to say, well, I never saw him on one of these bad days because now we have to accept these bad days. Well, as a reporter, as someone that talks about the news, it's not about what, like, if I saw a video of you,
Right.
I could still report that Joe did this.
Yeah, right.
But say, well, every day I ever saw him, that's not what it's about. You
it's
saw
bad,
the
it's
videos
only
that we
AI,
saw.
just for the record.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
bad video, it's AI.
Joe's all AI.
Yeah.
You're all over the AI. They put you in a lot of AI. But no, you know what I mean, that you can still report on the videos that you and I saw, that everybody else in this audience
this is
saw.
supposed to work. This is political philosophy 101.
Yeah.
In the First Amendment, we have freedom of the press. Mm-hmm. And the reason is that is a hedge against tyranny. Mm-hmm. If you have a free press that can ask any questions they want about government officials and their activities and publish their results of those inquiries in a responsible way, that protects everyone because it preserves freedom. And if you have a press apparatus that digs and digs and digs and digs and digs into one side of the political spectrum and just goes, everything's fine. Yeah. We're going to take whatever baloney is dished out to us on the other side of the political spectrum. Right. That is not the press doing what they need to do to protect all of us and all of our freedoms. No. It is infuriating.
And if you ever look at it like, and I know he's far left, but Rainn Wilson, I think his name is, from Dwight from The Office.
Oh, yeah, Dwight Schrute.
Yeah, where he even came out and said, you laser-like focus with a magnifying glass everything Trump does, and this was the Stephanie Ruhle, he said this, but for 4 years you covered nothing about Biden.
Right.
And it basically insinuating you've lost all credibility.
Yeah, a Trump can say something and it's taken out of context or the worst assumptions are made.
Oh, yeah.
Like the bloodbath comment, remember?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
There's going to be a bloodbath. And he was talking about auto industry jobs.
Clearly.
There's going to be... he was expressing a legitimate concern about the domestic auto industry and their workforce levels. Using what we call a metaphor.
Yes.
And that is taken out of context, say, oh, he's going to kill people or whatever. And then, if you remember, the week before the debate, right? And I did find it funny on social media when we hit the 1 year anniversary of Biden being like, I'll debate you anytime.
Anytime.
It was like before disaster. Right? But like the week or two before that, there started to be these stories in the media about cheap fakes.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Right? Oh, they're just, they're taking things out of context where he's stumbling and everybody stumbles once in a while, whatever. It's all fake or whatever. And then you turn on, and we talked about it on the show at the time.
Oh, 100%.
You turn on the camera where there's no filter and the whole world saw, oh boy, this is really
right
bad.
from
really the horse's mouth.
Yeah.
He can't do it. The week before the narrative was that was all a lie.
Yeah, that was all a lie. Then never mind what you've been seeing.
Yeah.
And then you're a conspiracy theorist. You're an evil person for questioning that.
Right. How dare you?
We got a couple comments here from viewers. Good morning. Foreign students barred from Harvard. What do you think?
So what's interesting about these big schools is they operate as nonprofits.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they have these enormous endowments, and so that gives leverage from the federal government to say, hey, wait a minute, if you're gonna sit on that much cash and still have nonprofits status.
Yeah.
Remember, if you're a nonprofit, or a 501c3 or whatever particular section of the code you're in, you're supposed to be non-political.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a better way to phrase it. You don't have to be non-political. You have to be non-partisan. You can engage in political activity as a nonprofit, but you can't engage in a partisan function. So if you have things where, one, they're engaging in a partisan activity, you can now sort of look at their tax-free status. Obviously, there's concerns about, and I think the Secretary of State was sort of making some of these points in his latest hearing. We're under no obligation as a country to let people in on a student visa. There is no right to have somebody come into the United States and study under a student visa. We do that when we feel it's in the best interest of the United States of America. And often it is. If we get somebody to, especially if it's from a friendly country, to come here and learn and then stay in the United States and increase our workforce, there's reasons why we do these things. But it's not people in all, some guy in China doesn't have an inherent right to come to America and stay here and then go back, especially if they're going to engage in activity where they're aiding and abetting nefarious stuff going on. So we do have to have an overall conversation about, one, what type of folks are coming into our country as far as these student visas. What is are they here literally just to learn and pay their tuition and go home? Oh, okay, whatever. Or ideally, are they here to come and learn and then start a company in Corning, New York?
Exactly.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
And two, these institutions where, I'm sure if you pull up the faculty, they're 100%.
Yeah.
Or not, maybe not 100%.
I think
99%.
I think it's like 99%. Yeah.
Is that really a nonpartisan, non-profit? And especially when they're sitting on tens of billions of dollars tax-free.
Yeah.
On
top of an endowment of $53 billion.
Legitimate questions to have.
Yeah. Now, I also wonder, because I always look at things from the optics of it. And, it's kind of like Van Hollen going to visit Abrego Garcia. Like, how do you defend that? You see this guy's history and it looks really bad. Right. How does the president of Harvard say, I'm going to take a 25% pay cut because I stand with the anti-Semitic protesters? I mean, I know that's not how he's saying it. But the optics to me is that's what he's doing.
Yeah. And certainly, we saw over the last couple of days here where anti-Semitism can go.
Yeah.
Even in the capital of the United States of America. And we do have to do so much better, and especially at these so-called elite liberal institutions where some of this radicalism sort of spins off in its own sort of weird bubble echo chamber into some really dangerous places.
And when you have faculty encouraging it in many instances, that's the grown-ups in the room.
That's where I think you do see sort of a red line where you can point to, all right, this isn't just somebody expressing their opinion.
Right.
I'm for free speech.
Of course.
But you're not just expressing opinion, you're calling on somebody to engage in violence. That's not protected. I can say you're a bad guy. I can't say
it all the
somebody.
time.
Yeah, not on the air. No. I can say you're a bad guy. I can't tell somebody else, hey, somebody should do something.
Exactly.
That's where we're starting to get to incitement to violence, and if then as an institution you're not going to do something about that.
And why aren't your the Jewish community on your campus? Why are they not valuable to you? Why do you not care about them being intimidated, harassed? I mean,
it should be anybody. It should be Jewish community. It should be anybody. If they're going to school.
Exactly right.
They should not feel unsafe because of their ethnicity, because of their religion, because of their political beliefs. It should be a place where, we're having challenging conversations.
Yeah, of course.
And people's assumptions are challenged. They have to learn to think. But that should be something where it's a tragedy that these major institutions, students and faculty and community members who are Jewish apparently no longer, justifiably so, no longer feel safe. I could not more strongly condemn anti-Semitism and also just I cannot more strongly condemn political violence in general.
All right, we got to take a short break. We got other comments. I have not forgot you. I have those people sending in comments. We'll get to them in just a little bit. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security and Horsets. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. And joining us in the Hesselson studio during the Steuben County Office for the Aging section of our program, Steuben County Office for the Aging, committing to maximizing quality of life, safety, and independence. We got a lot of great sponsors, Joe.
The nice folks up at the Department for the Aging.
Yeah. All right, we got a comment. Sadly, people don't know or have forgotten what Memorial Day is. A somber day of remembering the military personnel that were killed in battle or died as a result of wounds from battle. We must remember those veterans that suffered and died for this country. Never forget. Couldn't agree more.
I agree 100% with that, and I will be engaging in activities in some of the communities in my district on Memorial Day weekend, and just the bigger picture. We talk about freedom of press. Yeah. Talk about freedom of speech. Just in the last segment, you don't have freedom of anything unless people are willing to die for that freedom.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot who have. So certainly
remember
on their nice day off on Monday and remember the reason that you have it.
Good morning, Joe and Frank. Well, good morning. I was watching some popular leftist media show, and they had their opinion on the Golden Dome. And their idea, they believe it would serve to further destabilize relations with Russia, China, and with America. What is your opinion?
I think defensive capabilities protecting American lives are always a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, if that's an excuse that you use for not defending yourself.
Don't buy that shield, sir, whatever. The other knights will be mad at you.
Yeah, that bully's not going to like you if you fight back. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Good morning, Frank. Listen to this one. Good morning, by the way. It's always good to hear from one jovial, jubilant Joe. That's almost as good as
they were listening to the alliteration.
Many public servants come across as defeated, not Joe.
I like it.
One jovial,
Triple
jubilant
J.
Joe.
That's fantastic.
So before we talk about specifically the New York State budget, because obviously you're in the Assembly and we're talking about your time as our congressman. But first of all, what did you think personally? Because you're also the chairman of the Steuben County Republican Committee.
Yes.
I think that covers all of it.
Yeah.
Good father, husband.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
An okay son.
Yeah.
All those things. But what did you think of that poll about Stefanik, neck and neck?
I did see that within 1 point.
Yeah. And she hasn't announced. So we want to be clear.
Yeah.
That's important too.
Elise, I've known Elise for a long time. I first met Elise. I think I've talked about on the show when she was first running for Congress, and she was great to me when I was running and when I was serving in Congress. We had a wonderful relationship and sort of showing me the ropes and everything. My reaction was I copied, pasted into a group text, and I sent it to some of my friends, and I said, my tag was, if this is even close to accurate, ...
Yeah, no kidding.
Because let's say it's not even quite accurate. Let's say it's off a little bit. Well, let's say maybe she's down 5 or 6. That means she's starting where Lee ended.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point.
So if that's even close to being the true number as to where we're at, we've got a really, really, really good chance of winning the governor's mansion. And I can tell the folks out there, I believed this to be true before I served in the state assembly, but now that I've been there and am doing that job every day, the amount of change that we would have with a Republican governor as opposed to a Democratic governor, even if the Democrats retain control of the Assembly and Senate, would be immense. Where you'd have the entire state bureaucracy that you could now work with more closely as a legislator, as far as allocation of resources, as far as making sure that stuff that in your particular district gets done, as far as having leverage over the legislative process with the governor's veto. Even if that's the only office that changes and everything else stayed the same, which I don't think would happen if you elect a Republican governor. I think you certainly get more state assembly members. I certainly think you get more state senators as that happens. Just mathematically, I think you sort of have to. it would be a sea change for the state of New York. And so if that's even within a country mile of being the true number, she's got a really, really legitimate, legitimate chance to be the next governor of the state of New York.
And I love, even with her statement on the big, beautiful bill yesterday, she takes a dig because of Salt. She takes a dig at Cuomo. So she's, if nothing else, she's teasing us, but it's getting a lot of people excited. I have numerous viewers, and I think this is a great idea. When you get your inflation rebate check, they're going to donate it to Elise Stefanik's campaign for $200. I think that's a great idea.
Well, because there's not another one coming the next week.
No, exactly.
It's like,
one and done.
That's such a gimmick.
Oh my gosh, $200, and really, it's insulting.
Yeah,
I'm not saying I'm not going to take $200.
Yeah, sure.
Well,
I
know what I mean.
That. Yeah, sure. You're going to take people are going to take what money they're going to get back from their taxes, but couldn't we do it more? Let's fundamentally change how we do business.
Yeah, how about that?
As opposed to gimmickry. So I that caught my eye in a big way. 1 point difference. It was very, very, very interesting.
Yes, and it's exciting. You can tell Trump's excited because he endorsed Lawler for Congress.
Yeah.
That was not such a veiled.
And County Executive Blakeman for County Executive. And where that comes from for folks is obviously Congresswoman Stefanik is thinking about running for governor. To Frank's point, she hasn't announced anything yet, so I don't want to.
There's nothing.
We'll see what happens, right? There are other folks that are thinking about running for governor. I do not think we're going to have a primary. This is my now as county chairman speculating. I think we will be able to get through this process without an actual primary next June where people are going after each other, because I think there's a heavy appetite, whether Elise runs or not, whosoever is our nominee. When we saw what happened with Lee, now administrator of the EPA, Zeldin, when we saw polls like we're seeing, it's not just playing politics. It's not just speculation. It's not just Republicans talking to Republicans. There's a feeling that we could actually save New York. We could actually win this race and change trajectory of this state for the next generation. I think there will not be an appetite for a dragged out fight. I think it'll be sort of worked out in a very cordial way. So Elise is looking at it, but then Congressman Lawler, County Executive Blakeman, he's the county executive in Nassau County on Long Island. There's been talk about those two guys as well. And people have pointed out that the president has endorsed each of those two gentlemen very nicely, endorsed them for their current position. And there is speculation that was to clear the field in some way for Elise, who obviously he was trying to put in his cabinet. So he's got a high opinion of Congresswoman Stefanik. I will say, like I said, I've known Elise for a little bit for a long time. We sort of bump into each other every now and again over a long period of time. And again, she was I served in Congress with her. And she was supportive of my campaign when I ran for the special election for Congress and endorsed me and helped me. Mike Lawler, I've known a little bit for even longer. I've known Mike for a long time. I've nothing but positive things to say about him as well. Mr. Blakeman, I don't know as well. I've met him.
Yeah, he came
but because he's coming from the county world and the other two are in the congressional and assembly world. Mr. Law is a former assemblyman. Ms. Stefanik hasn't served in the state legislature. But those two, I just know a little bit more also because of their age. They're both they're both younger than me.
Yeah.
Mike and Elise are both younger than me, which makes me feel
old. So is the Vice President of the United States. How does that make you feel?
Not
good.
I mean, good for him, I guess.
No, I love JD Vance. But I remember when LeBron James got drafted, and he was the first athlete that was younger than me.
Right.
He's
still playing though.
Then it starts. It really starts snowballing.
Yeah,
So
I'm used to being I've been involved in politics a long time, and I've always been like the young guy in the room. Yeah. And now it's like.
Yeah, what happened, JD?
Well, when I did the congressional thing, I became like an elder statesman at 39. I'm 42 now, but I was an ex-congressman at 39. That was sort of my role for a couple years, was elder statesman in the party.
That's funny. Comment from a viewer regarding New York State governor. My opinion is anyone but a Democrat. That's fair.
That's sort of my take too. Where we're going to have to, because everybody's got to make their own decisions. You don't know what's going on inside somebody's head. And I know there's a lot of people that want people to do it. And again, I don't know if people are actually going to say, I am running for governor. But whoever is our candidate, again, I think we'll get there without a primary. They become the captain of the team for this cycle. And I think we're all prepared to line up behind the captain of the team, whomsoever it is, and win. And there's no time to mess around as far as, Lee Zeldin said we got to save the state during his race, and that is still the case. We still have to save the state.
This viewer saying Cuomo made the remark that New York would never be red, but if Elise is running, I'll be voting. That's I mean,
there you go.
I've got to say though,
how depressing is it that guy is the favorite to be mayor?
I was just going to bring him up, and he was actually. This is such
you say all these. I'm all happy because you got Elise within 1 point of Hochul, and now we got to talk about it.
But he's so arrogant that he was running on his COVID record until the DOJ investigation.
Right. Yeah.
He was running on his
record about, he still thinks it's like those months where, he's holding the press conferences and everybody's,
worshiping him.
Yeah. I mean, that guy's bad news.
Yeah.
And
I think he's going to get it.
He's the favorite.
Right.
I mean, all the polls show he's ahead. The person that's number 2 is way too far to the left to beat him. So he's sort of blocking out the anti-Cuomo vote can't coalesce around somebody because you got this. It was Madami, whatever. Yeah. I served in the assembly with him. I've never met the guy. But
he's radical.
Yeah, he's out there because he's been campaigning for the city the whole time. I've never met him.
Is he the one that was yelling at Holman? Who was the candidate that?
Oh, he may have been. I don't know.
Yeah, remember that someone was screaming and he's just eating the apple.
Oh,
remember that when he visited you guys?
I was in the pre-meeting for that with Holman.
Yeah.
Like, because he met with the Republicans, then he held a press conference, and he was walking out, and I think that may have been him.
I think it was his opponent.
Yeah. I was, in the building at that time, but I wasn't physically in that hallway when he was walking out.
Just eating an apple. But back to, I'm glad that they're finally investigating Cuomo. I don't think that someone should get away with what he did, but if he's going to get away with what he did, he shouldn't get away with lying about what he did as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, New York City's going to have a rough time because they're either going to get a guy that's, sort of like a radical socialist.
Fit right in on the college protest. Too.
Yeah,
really. Yeah.
Or they're going to get Andrew Wackadoo Cuomo.
And this isn't where he just doesn't end at May.
No. This is a rehabilitation project.
100%.
And I think he's still I think he's still so Cuomo, that I think he's still thinking like White House.
I do too. I think there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, like in his mind,
he never gave up that dream.
No,
because he was confident enough. I'll use that word. That when he was polling at 1%, what was that? The year of Trump and Hillary, 1%, and he still was pursuing a potential run for. If you're polling at 1%, you probably might as well say, "All right, we're good."
Yeah. But
you're me. I'm polling 1%.
Yeah, almost anybody you get 1%. People just say, "Oh yeah, whatever." That's bad news for the city.
Yep. We got to take a short break. Stay with us. This is, frankly speaking, WYDC TV, Big Fox. All right. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security and Horsets. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio, and this is the Steuben County office for the aging section of our program, and in that studio, Joe Sempolinski. Joe, what did you think? We talked with Assemblyman Phil Palmisano last week. Yeah, he's doing a great job, just like you. He had very nice things to say about you, but off the air, not on the air. I asked him to do that off the air. So what did you think about the budget? First of all, you're getting all these, I think, important bills blocked.
Yeah. So
thank you for sending those so we know, keeping us aware.
What happens is we have the ability, an individual assembly member has the ability to force action in committee on legislation. You can do up to a certain number of bills each session. And what they'll do is instead of, it'd be one thing if they just had an up or down vote.
Yeah.
And they said, all right, and then if the Democrats vote against it, they do what's called a hold, where they do a motion and say, well, we're going to hold this for now and just look at it down the road, and they vote for that. And so they block it. It's a procedural gimmick to prevent not only moving to the floor, but even a substantive vote in committee. They do a sort of a procedural thing. And it's very frustrating because, we've got good legislation.
I think the idea of trying to use local farmers for school lunches was brilliant.
Yeah,
Who could be against that?
Right.
And
Right.
who could be against the EV as well? But let's put that aside. That's a little more politically charged,
Right.
let's say.
Right.
No pun intended,
Right.
politically charged. But
and those ones were ones from my colleagues. The week
that
before,
was
I highlighted ones where I was the prime sponsor, and the ones I pushed a little bit this year were ones that had to do with Second Amendment, with public safety.
yeah.
For instance, I have a bill that says if you commit domestic violence in front of a child, that should be an enhanced crime, an enhanced penalty. Because now you're not only obviously engaging in assault through the domestic violence, but you're traumatizing the kid for life.
Yeah.
Shouldn't that be an enhanced penalty? That seems like a pretty logical bill to me. The other one, if you dox a cop with intent, like it was written in the bill, that it's not like, I inadvertently said that Officer Jones lives at 123 Main Street.
Right.
If you intended to
go on
harass
social media,
them or endanger them in some way, that should be an enhanced type of harassment. Because now you're endangering them off duty. You're endangering their wife, their husband, their kid, their grandma that lives there. Who knows? That to me also seems like a logical will. So, we've got a lot of stuff that you wouldn't call sort of hyper partisan or, it's just sort of common sense legislation.
I mean, just going back to that.
But it just shows you how aggressively partisan and radical the Democrat supermajority is in the Assembly.
Because I don't even see with using local farmers how Democrat or Republican, you can use that to promote yourself. And I mean, this is not a bad thing for any party. I can't see like I said, EV's a little bit more charged. Okay, fine. That one to me.
The EV is charged.
That's why I said.
The EV is charged.
That's why I said it earlier. It failed the first time, so I keep going back to the well, and I keep trying. Darn it. So what do you think about the overall budget? I know the argument is when you're talking $250 billion, there's got to be something good in it.
Yeah, I mean there certainly were things that are better or worse within this. And so the procedure for this is there's 10 bills. And each of them has their own section of the government. So the only one that passed on time was the bill that said the state should pay its debt payments. There's nothing substantive in it. So of the 9 other bills were all late, and they all passed within a couple of days of each other, about 6 weeks after they were supposed to. Some of them are spending, and some of them are more substantive.
Okay.
Some of the bills. So the spending ones are literally just an enumeration of amounts of money and what they go to, and that's the bill. $1 million to the such and such fund, or $2 million to the city of Corning for blah blah blah. Whatever it is.
Sure.
And it's broken into different sort of broad categories. And then some of the other bills are more substantive. In theory, that's supposed to be programmatic language for what you're spending on. There's supposed to be some sort of tie, right? Oh, we got a new program for X, and it's going to cost this much money or whatever. There is then policy that does make it into there. And then there is one bill that's usually the last one we vote on that is the funding for the other branches of government. Because most of this is the executive branch, right?
Right.
What we think of as bureaucracy. But there's also one bill that has to fund the function of the legislative branch and the function of the judicial branch. The money that actually pays for court workers and legislative staff and these sort of things. So that makes up the budget. Either 10 bills. I voted no 10 times.
Made that pretty clear.
Now, to be clear, I did go through what was in the bills. I did, we had our staff is amazing. Our Ways and Means staff, that's the committee that handles all budgetary functions, the Ways and Means, amazing. So I knew what was in there as I'm voting on these things. And so they were mindful no's. They were thought out no's, but I still reached the conclusion that I should not be voting for this on all 10 of those bills. And I highlighted some of that if you can go to my social media, you can see my debates on the floor, some of them. And I was particularly frustrated with they call it the TII. It's really a COLA, a cost of living adjustment, or at least it should be. For those who care for the developmentally disabled, those who care for those who are mentally ill, getting them even with what inflation has been would have been a 7.8% increase. The Democrats, Republicans, Assembly, Senate, and the legislative branch all agreed on that.
Yeah.
Again, I'm one of the most conservative Republicans, some of the most liberal Democrats, both chambers. We all say those are people we should start with for the budget. If we're going to spend $250 billion. We can't find, $500 million for these people.
Right.
So the governor wanted to do 2.1. We wanted 7.8. The governor wanted 2.1, and we ended up at 2.6.
Okay.
Right. And so I said, I can't vote for this. That's not a fair deal for these people. 7.8 makes them whole. You're going to 2.6 when you started at 2.1. Come on. And during the debate on that bill, where that particular provision was in, we were told from, the majority side, the Democratic side, that each percentage of this is $100 million. And I'm like, okay, but again, we're spending $250 billion. And these this isn't some frivolous thing. These are the most vulnerable people. We should start with this, right? And so the next day, I'm reading through materials for the bills we're voting on the next day, and they had a new tax credit for independent film, $100 million tax credit, which is that would have been 1% raise for those who are taking care of the developmentally disabled and the mentally challenged. And so I got up on the floor. I go, "This is all you folks here preach to me about your values, and you're always sticking up for the little guy and whatever. And we're going to give $100 million in tax breaks to Hollywood, and we couldn't find the money yesterday for those who are taking care of the most vulnerable people in our society.
What's wrong?"
So that's why I don't know on this stuff.
How much of the budget relies on federal funding? Too much, because that's going to be an issue, isn't it?
Well, that's where the state is sort of addicted to federal money, and that is where some of the commentary you may have received from the executive, the governor, is coming from. And she has said that, if the big, beautiful bill goes through, then suddenly we may have to come back into session and whatever.
But doesn't she get all the say in that? Didn't she try to put a provision in there that basically she got a huge say over what could be cut?
She's tried. She has a lot of say to begin with.
Well,
the governor is very powerful. The governor is more powerful in the state system than the president is in the federal system. She's got a lot of say over this. But let's look at it this way. We spent $250 billion. That was significantly more than what we spent last year. That was an increase. That wasn't a cut.
Right.
If you are really, truly concerned that your big benefactor, Uncle Sam, is going to curtail what he's given you, wouldn't you then curtail your own budget in anticipation of that? She did not do that.
And continues to attack Trump. I mean,
so this is crocodile tears, in my opinion.
No, I couldn't agree more, but it's just funny that you keep attacking listen, on certain issues, I know you don't like the president, but maybe let's lay off, because we need that money. They've created that.
There's a lot of folks with a lot of TDS in the Democratic Party right now.
I love the fact that in Washington it's the big, beautiful bill, and you guys get the big, ugly. Right?
That is, yes. That is, so I talk about there's this policy stuff that's on the budget, and it's usually crammed into one particular bill, all in one. It even has nothing to do with the topic of that bill, and they call it the big ugly.
We got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking, wrapping up today's edition. So get those last minute questions in. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam. Brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. You can see the Glass Fest is starting to form out there on the roof cam. This is the Steuben County Office for the Aging section of our program, and we're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. In that studio, Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski. There we go. So, Joe, a couple of comments first. Electric school buses are an absolute idiotic law. That's not really a question.
That mandate is very problematic,
Yes.
and we should. We one of the things we were trying to do, as you were talking about, is give people opt-outs for it. It's buckle up on the expense on that, and then before we even get to the safety issues.
Well, even look at like Corner Payne Post School District. Their budget failed.
Yeah.
Imagine people are upset about the cost. Imagine if the next proposition shows multi millions of dollars for EV buses.
That's where we're going. That is where we're going.
And charging stations, et cetera.
Yeah.
Comment from a different viewer. And that is precisely why Joe Sempolinski is number one in my book. He stands for what's right and not just for frivolous tax breaks for Hollywood.
There you go. I was frustrated.
Joel and Jubilant Joe, what was that?
Joe jumping something. Yeah. But no, I even had, there were even Democrats that came up to me afterwards and said, thanks for saying that.
Yeah. I mean, it needed to be said. Yeah. So, as we mentioned, you are the county chair for the Republican Party. Primaries, it's hard to believe. It's so weird how you hand in your petitions and it seems like primaries there like that.
Yeah.
Then if you win the primary, you got
a long way in November. Yeah, with the early primary, the early petitions, it's an all-year thing. You're doing petitions starting in February, and then the elections in November. So like, if people it's so early, people get confused. They're signing for it. Like, what is this for?
Yeah,
Because especially if you're in a village that's having like a mayor's race in March, people will think, "Oh, is this for like March?"
And
like,
the
no,
school
this is
budget,
for November.
And you got the school board, everything. I mean, they could not make this more confusing.
Right? Yeah. So you got village in March, you got the schools in May, and you got primaries in June. So we do have some county legislative primaries.
Is this I'm not gonna say unprecedented throughout history, but I don't remember the last time where we had this many primaries.
We've got 3.
Yeah.
2 of them are open seats. So when you have an open
right.
seat, you tend to have a primary more because nobody's challenging an incumbent.
I didn't realize both were.
You've got legislator Lozo and legislator Ferratella that are retiring. They're not running for re-election. So we've got a primary in the district that's Canisteo and Thurston and Cameron. Actually, Canisteo, Cameron, Thurston if you're going across as far as the towns. And then you've got a primary in the district that is the town of Corning, not the city, the town, Hornby and Caton. And then there is also the third primary will be the town of Irwin.
Right.
So, have you ever been to Irwin?
I have been to Irwin. We've had not every single candidate on, but we've had everyone from Irwin, I should say.
Okay.
But we haven't had everyone from the other districts, but we're working on it.
Yeah, so you've got a 3-way race in Irwin, and the other ones are head-to-head primaries.
And it's nice to see people getting involved. I know, like, no one wants a challenger. Or
I think it's a positive thing.
It's healthy.
How this is played out, especially, sort of the way it's played out. I think it's a healthy thing for the party. I think it's engaging people. I think it's getting people involved and running, and then whomsoever the people pick. The way I handle it as chairman is this is a democratic process. The people are going to decide who the Republican nominee is, not some party boss.
Right.
And when that person becomes the nominee after primary day, then they're my candidate. They're my person. And in 2 of these 3 races, there is a general election. There's a Democrat running, and whoever is the Republican nominee, we will do our darndest to help them in November.
Hey, I just think it's just nice to have the conversation. I like to see, because we've had so many guests on. They're all holding meet the candidates and things like this. That's healthy. That's what this show is all about.
That's it. It's engaging folks. And remember, when you're talking about a county legislative race, I'll say this from personal experience. 10 years ago this year, I ran for county legislature.
Oh, that's right.
I lost by 8 votes.
Yeah, that was wild.
Yeah. And so it's a scale of race where one person's effort as a candidate or one person's effort helping a candidate or even maybe one vote can determine who the legislator is. So it's a very accessible level of government, which is a good thing. And having folks from a variety of walks of life, a variety of backgrounds, if you're talking about the 7 different legislative candidates in these primaries, they're very wide ranging as to where they're coming from. I think is a very healthy thing.
Yep. Well, Joe, it's hard to believe we're out of time. I think we covered everything.
I think everything is all fixed.
Good. We got the world's problems all fixed right here on Frankly Speaking.
Yeah.
I hope you have a nice Memorial Day.
Yeah, and again, everybody remember what Memorial Day is all about, but and enjoy your weekend.
Yes, thank you. We'll be back on Tuesday with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. We'll see you bright and early on Tuesday. Look forward to it already. Have a great Memorial.